Barakah Salah to our Muslim brothers and sisters. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Indeed. Eid Mubarak and happy holidays to all of you watching us from wherever it is you're watching. Well, I do not know if the holiday extends beyond Nigeria. I know it will extend beyond Nigeria, but some other countries do not all the countries of the world declare a holiday.
Yes, no, not all the countries.
But indeed, if you are celebrating today, Eid Mubarak to you, and welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Well, from this side, I can already feel the celebratory mood from our Muslim brothers and sisters, and this is just to say we felicitate with you. Eid Kabir is in order. Welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.
See, everyone has taken all the possible greetings, so which do I stick with? You know what? I second all of the motions moved. Let's be a part of your celebration, shall we? Welcome to Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
You know, talking about celebrations, a lot of people are not finding it easy in this season to celebrate the Eid al-Kabir. Yesterday, our crew went out to different parts of town to see how the preparations were coming on. And it wasn't exactly a, there's usually this air of excitement, this air of celebration. Everybody's looking forward to it. The only thing that a lot of people are looking forward to this time, for those who usually get the holidays at this season, is the fact that they're not going to go to work. They're going to be saving money on fuel. They're going to be saving money on transportation. So that's what a lot of people were excited about. But in terms of like the holiday itself, it wasn't exactly that exciting. Beniak went to the travel spots, to the motor parks and to the train stations. The number of travelers, the numbers were lower than usual. And the drivers were all complaining about the fact that, come on, by the time you finish getting the fares from the travelers, all you do is just buy fuel. And by the time you're getting to the other end, you're looking at, what did I just do? Did I... So it's a challenging period, so to speak, and everyone's really feeling the bite of it. But the good thing about this whole period is the fact that you have time to sit with your family. Call it an opportunity to sit back and reevaluate where your money is going to, the little money you have. Do you have to go on that trip? Do you have to buy that fuel? Do you need to move your car at that point in time? Or can you take a walk? Can you use a bicycle? In fact, I think this is an opportunity for a lot of people to learn to walk. I didn't say walk from one village to the other or from one town to the other. But then it's an opportunity to sit back and say, okay, I have time with the family. I can sit back with the family and look at things as tough as it is. I mean, the government keeps talking about the fact that things will get better. The days will get better. They say it gets darker just before the dawn. So let's keep hope alive as we celebrate this season with friends and family. I mean, a high five to somebody, a handshake, a smile might just be what the other person needs. So don't stay hooked on the tough times.
Indeed.
Stay hooked on the fact that there is life and you are alive and can smile and say hello to somebody, as I was saying hello to you, Mark.
What's more to add, apart from the fact that we are a people of faith, is the reason why we have our religious holidays. And if there's any lesson that we take or that we should take, it is from the celebration itself. What is it about? The fact that, both major religions which we have in Nigeria, which we celebrate, well, that's what we have in the world as well, descended from Abraham, depending on what you call him in your faith, who was asked to go and sacrifice his son. And at the end of the day, on the mountain, God provided a ram. So let us not forget that he was a man of faith. And I think that at the end of the day, we will need to celebrate that faith in a way that is deeper and more meaningful in this season that is more challenging. We mustn't lose our faith in our country, faith in the humanity of human beings. Faith in our general humanity in general. And this is about, if this is also a season of sacrifice, then, we will learn to make, or we'll need to make sacrifices. I think what a number of people will be saying, though, is that we need to see the sacrifices more from our leaders. That they need to be able to show us very clearly what sacrifices they too are making. I've read some of the, I read the president's speech, read some of the goodwill messages from, you know, well-meaning leaders. But while all of this is wonderful and, you know, giving us messages of encouragement, there needs to be a little more clarity on what sacrifice the government itself is making, especially leaders within government. And not just, you know, telling followers that they will need to tighten their belt. They are already tightening their belt. I think it was the president who said, let the poor breathe. Do not suffocate them. People are already suffocated, and it is evident in many places. But I hope that, you know, not just our leaders, wherever it is you find yourself as a leader, spare a thought for those who are beneath, for those who are under your care. It should not be beneath you. No, that's not the word. But spare a thought for those who are under your care at this point. You know, what sacrifices will you be making so they can breathe a little better? These are questions that, you know, I hope, and messages I hope we ponder on in this period. And will make this celebration a little more meaningful for all of us. Bukola.
Yes, indeed, Mark. What sacrifice, you know, will the leaders be making, particularly in terms of, you know, their already humongous salaries and allowances? What will they be letting go? I know this is going to throw up, is going to elicit a debate, you know, but the leaders must, you know, show example, particularly in line with the spirit of today's celebration. You rightly pointed out that it's the significance of today's celebration is one of faith, how Ibrahim was willing to sacrifice his son, and how his son also was willing to lay down his own life for the greater good. So it's really about sacrificing oneself for the greater good. So what will the leaders be willing to give up? You know, just to remember our Muslim brothers and sisters as well. I know that the peak of this celebration for them is that, you know, they're able to afford that ram and also make that significant sacrifice. You know, and for those who are unable to, they're just content that there will be love this season, during which those who are able to make that purchase and make that sacrifice will share the love of the food and the meat and the drinks to the others. But how much does a ram cost this season? You don't want to go there. The other day we were reviewing the papers, and what we saw was really alarming. How ram is going for as high as 400,000. Cows are selling for as high as 600 and 700,000. That is really, really alarming. And we wonder what today's celebration will look like for our Muslim brothers and sisters. But we are people of faith, as you've said, Markwe, and we will celebrate. We'll celebrate with our Muslim brothers and sisters, and we'll believe that it will be a good celebration for them. It's an administration that rode to power on the message of renewed hope, and we hope that the administration will live by that slogan and indeed bring about the realization of the dreams and aspirations, the collective dreams and aspirations of Nigerians. Kayode.
Honestly, I think these are not too much to ask for, really. Someone has said that governing Nigeria might just be one of the simplest things a leader can do, because all Nigerians need just the basic things. I know the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, released a statement yesterday saying, well, it's actually very difficult governing Nigeria. But that's because you see that all of those basic amenities, those basic things are still lacking. And you just expect that governments will pay attention to those things, get them sorted. And honestly, Nigerians, as has been said time and again, do not ask for too much. One of the things that really hit me from one of the reports of our correspondent, Benny, was one of the commuters saying that he read. Now, if you're familiar with Pidgin English, you'd understand when someone says he read, like it's red, literally means that, they're bleeding financially, like things are not going well. And he made that statement, and it just hit me that, wait, Nigeria is a land meant to be green, not red, okay? That's our color, green, fruitfulness and all of that. So when people are saying it is red, we don't have money, then I expect that government would have maybe thought ahead. In fact, one of them said, maybe you should go to other climes and learn from them, see what they're doing right and bring it to bear. And I was wondering, what can government do? We have all said it, sacrifice. Ibrahim, wanted to sacrifice his child. If you were going to take the typology, it doesn't mean the leader should sacrifice the poor people or Nigerians. It was an act of faith. You know, it was something that was inconvenient for him, actually, really for him, because he had waited for long. But let's allow you to take a listen to this report, see what Nigerians are going through, and maybe it will hit home for the leaders to do right by the people.
This is the popular Jabi Motor Park in the nation's capital. Once a beehive of commuters, is witnessing a low turnout of passengers, a situation that is a far cry from the previous year. Some of the drivers say the low turnout may not be unconnected with the current economic situation in the country.
When they don't increase fuel, there's no gain on transport again. All our money goes on fuel.
The past one is better than this one. God, the fuel now, you buy fuel of a liter. I only buy fuel from here to Niger State, 20 liter. I could do about 3,000 plus. Now it's 10,800.
The recent removal of petrol subsidy by the federal government has caused a rise in the cost of transportation, and these travelers are bearing the brunt.
It used to be 2,000 from here to Okene, at a 0.25 from here to Okene. But right now, they are asking for 7,000.
It's not really affordable because 4,500 from just Mina to Abuja is way too much. But still, we just have to pay because we don't have any choice.
Now they are taking 10,000 naira, 10,000 something also. But with load, we hear 12,000 or more erased.
There's a difference almost 3 times compared to what we are paying before.
The story is not different at the popular Idu railway station in the nation's capital. Although Channel's television crew is denied access into the station, the train station, which is known to receive throngs of commuters at festive seasons like this, is witnessing low patronage. Some travelers who seem unhappy with the increment in fare advise the government to take proactive measures to address the situation.
To make something, let's copy the company the country that is working for. Let's copy from them. Ask them, how are they doing it? How did they do it? How are they getting their fuel? Whatever make their fuel work for us.
Let us refine an idea okay for us. Let's refine our fuel here so that everything will just be in order, understand?
We are ready to reform our economy into real development we can support. But let the government try to do something which can relieve the masses.
These Salah celebrations offer many people the opportunity to reunite with their families and friends. Nigerians hope for a better country beyond the celebrations. Benny Ark, Channels Television News.
So what more can I add? That is the situation of a lot of Nigerians right now. So it's over to you, leaders across board, not just the president, the governors, the ones in the House of Representatives, Senate, the State House of Assembly as well. I can go on and on. The councillors, the local government chairmen, do right by your people, all right? So having said that, today we're going to focus a lot on some of the virtues of the season and what we can take out of it, all right? We shouldn't just do the celebrations. The messages, the virtues should also linger in our lives. So it's a full package for you this morning. Honestly, I wish I had some very cheery news for you, but I mean, the stories are just right there, okay? The Guardian newspaper has this one on inflation and subsidy removal. And there you have it. 7.1 million Nigerians may become poorer as families face 5,700 naira monthly loss. So someone has been doing the calculations. I imagine a lot of Nigerians have been calculating that as well. Okay, this is how much I earn. This is how much I have to spend on petrol. This is how much I have to spend on power. By the way,
you know, a tank that used to be filled with 15,000 naira will now be filled with about between 30 and 35 or even 40,000 naira.
There you go. So, I mean, if you use an SUV, you know that that is probably your situation right now. So they're just making all of those trade-offs and wondering what has to go. Is it food? No, food cannot go. Maybe we'll cut down on the food and go to the 101 or 011 or even 001. In case you're wondering what that means, it just means some skip breakfast, take lunch, and maybe skip dinner, or just find a way around it. So a lot of people have to sit down and make that trade-offs. And you wonder, maybe this is not what you want to be doing with, you know, your Salah celebrations. You want to celebrate, but people have to make these tough choices. And you see that map that shows Nigeria's multidimensional poverty index by states. You see some of the states in red as a representation of 0.351 to 0.500. That's numbers, indicates the MPI values for each state. So it just gives you a picture of what things look like right now for the average Nigerian out there. So that's a big one for the Guardian newspaper, something to really chew on right now. It's a reality. But while all of this is ongoing, right, there's still all of the talk about lobbying. Oh, yes. And it's just on top of that story, you see lobbyists storm body for ministerial appointments. Yeah. So it's just an irony of sorts. Will you call it an irony or just the tale of two different worlds, right? There's 7.1 million Nigerians who may become poorer. And then there's the privileged Nigerians who are lobbying for ministerial appointments.
Sorry, did I say that?
Hey, I mean, it's been said time and again that a lot of people go into politics not to serve the people, but to serve their pocket. So it might not be far-fetched. So it's important for people to then state their purpose and show it. A couple more stories, really. I don't want to just get you all down with some of the stories. But finally, Salah, Katsina governor rejects 100 rams from philanthropists. So what is that story about? More details on page 30. Let's leave it there for The Guardian.
And flip to the Vanguard newspaper, which chose similar path this morning with its lead story. Listen to this. Use subsidy savings to lessen suffering. World Bank tells FG, that's federal government, says additional 7.1 million Nigerians will be pushed into poverty. Urges removal of forex restrictions on 43 items, approves fresh 500 million naira loan for Nigeria. Yes, you heard it.
Naira?
Additional $500 million loan for Nigerians. World Bank plans additional 750 million naira $1 million. I don't know why I keep saying it.
It's okay.
I think it's the reality of the naira.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Additional $750 million grant for Nigeria's electrification project. So, what's happening here, Kayode?
It's okay to think in naira, by the way.
Yeah.
It's okay, you're a Nigerian. But, you know, when I keep saying...
We're already on the fringes of, you know, 73.5% ratio to the, you know, to the debt, and, you know, this is additional loan.
Yeah, and when they say that, you know, we're using savings from subsidy for other things, you ask, are we really, did we even have the money to pay for subsidy in the first place? I mean, did we have enough revenues to cover our expenses, natural salaries, project, and subsidy? I don't think we had that. So maybe we should put that in proper context. So a lot of people don't think, oh, there's actually that money already on ground for subsidy, which will now divert into other things. I mean, looking at our projections, I don't think we had that.
True, the report was to the extent that we're already defaulting on subsidy payment. You know, but what's the appropriateness of this additional loan in the light of the current circumstances? We're already at over 83 trillion naira debt. Well, I guess the federal government will provide an explanation.
I think the Debt Management Office put out a figure recently and said they had not added the ways and means balance, the ways and means rather. So if you had put all of that together, maybe we were inching towards 70 or so to get that figure right. So that is our reality right now.
And speaking of the Debt Management Office, it also warned you know, that federal government should stay off further loans. All right, still with the Vanguard newspaper this morning, if you go to the bottom strip, close to the bottom strip, jostling for principal offices divides senators. Well, so it's not just at the federal level, at the executive level rather, but it's also happening at the National Assembly, and I guess this will also be simultaneous with the House of Representatives. In the coming days, we'll get to know who the minority leaders will be, the chief whips, so look out for that, the politics of the National Assembly. And just one more story before we exit the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Above the nameplates, 2023 presidential election not transparent, inclusive, that's ascribed to the European Union. And we saw the INEC National Commissioner on Voter Education make a case for the commission after that presentation of the report by the European Union. Let's leave it there for the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
Oh, Daily Trust is the one we have I'm holding here, and they're focused on the Eid al-Kabir celebration with this headline: economics, security challenges surmountable. That's coming from the president, with the writers Akpabio, Abbas, others preach love, unity. Buhari urges support for President Atiku. Obi call for prayers. It continues on page 4, and then we see the pictures and the inserts of Muslim faithful that are praying. They're praying on the Mount of Mercy at the plain of Arafat outside the holy city of Makkah, Saudi Arabia yesterday. I'm sure there are some Nigerians there who are also praying.
Oh, lots of a significant number of Nigerians there.
Indeed. Indeed, even though we got some not so sweet news about the health conditions of some Nigerians who went for the pilgrimage. But we do hope that they get better and come back safe. Below that, you have World Bank, many World Bank grants marred in corruption. That's coming from the ICPC. And someone asked the question, so marred in corruption, well, from what angle? Is it from the World Bank end or from the Nigerian end?
From the Nigerian end. Big questions, really. But the World Bank has clarified that this new one you people are asking for is not a grant, it's a loan.
Did you say you people?
Yes, you people. You people.
It's a loan that was approved
because
in 2021.
Because we are we people to them. Yeah, so...
Okay, 2021. Okay, so let's see. So ICPC would have some questions to answer there. I mean, Nigerians will be asking, so what have you done? If a lot of these many grants are marred in corruption, is it from what angle? Who's been picked up? What's going on? I mean, one of the things that Nigeria needs to get back to is giving the citizenry information about what's going on. I mean, someone says leadership speaks. Leadership speaks to the people. Leadership shouldn't be shrouded in secrecy.
Yeah, secrecy.
You know, speak to the people and let them know what's going on. Then some very interesting ones here, Mark. And on page 8, you have this one. Bride's relative steals dowry in Kano.
I mean, you hear all manner of crimes, even crimes you never thought were possible before. You'll hear those type of things. I mean, this season, people had better brace up, be a little more vigilant. You know, you don't want to be a victim of stories that touch the heart. That's not what you should be. So please let us all be vigilant, even with those that we would normally trust.
Some just come to my mind. I mean, looking at Daily Trust at the nameplate there, I'm just thinking that leadership should work towards building the trust of the citizens in the leadership in Nigeria. And that's it from Daily Trust here.
Well, talking about leadership, that's a paper I have for you this morning. Yes, leadership newspapers. They have the story at Eid al-Kabir, Tinubu, governors assure Nigerians of better future. That's what they have on the front page. I'm working day and night to move nation forward, says President. Pilgrims pray for peace, prosperity at Arafat. Police, NSCDC raise security bar nationwide. And I can tell you that here in the Federal Capital Territory, on my way to work, I did see quite a number of policemen at strategic junctions right here in the FCT. So we say thank you to them and well done. We hope that this season will be hitch-free and we'll have a very secure celebrations in all parts of the country, not just in the Federal Capital Territory. And I guess that well done will come in full when that is achieved at the end of the celebrations and even beyond. A number of other stories here. Kano, Adamawa, Kogi, 5 others score high in budget transparency. That's according to your report. I know that a number of states will be bragging with this one now, but please note that they said it is budget transparency, not budget implementation. So they are 2 different things. Let's not confuse it. Page 7 is where you see details. Bill wins Sierra Leone's presidential election. Yeah, that has been there for a while. I know that Nigerians did show significant interest in the elections in our neighboring sister country, Sierra Leone. And, well, page 6 is where you'll find details for those who would like to see how the results were declared. And flooding. FCTA declares Trademore Estate disaster zone. So it does appear that some emergency measures might be taken in that particular area. Ekweremadu Ohaneze meets UK envoy, begs for leniency. The story is on page 6 of the paper. I do hope that our diplomatic efforts do not just wane at writing letters to the court. Now the sentence has been passed. Can anything kick in diplomatically to see what can be done? Just asking. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
We'll take a look at a New Telegraph. A New Telegraph leads with Eid al-Kabir. The angle, though, is this one. Nigerians have lost, I take that again. Nigerians have almost lost hope. ACF cries out. It's important to properly contextualize that, and it's ironic because this administration came in on the back of a renewed hope. So just how much hope do Nigerians have left? Some would say all you need is a little hope. As far as you have a little hope, then that is enough. You see the picture of the president there in Lagos. And just on top of that one, you see CBN sets transaction limits for contactless payments. Page 25 for more details. And just one more for you. This has gotten a lot of people talking. FG imposes annual fee on vehicles' proof of ownership certificate. Shetima announces FG's plan to ensure access to single interest loans for MSMEs. So this proof of ownership certificates, annual fee, what is it all about? Every year you have to pay, or at least
because you already paid to get the proof of ownership certificate, right?
Yeah.
So now you have to pay an annual fee. Talking about the people making more and more sacrifices.
I need to get into this story because I don't quite understand it. I need to be honest. So pages 5 and 7. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
And turn very quickly to This Nigeria. This Nigeria also leads with that story about, the contention for key offices at the National Assembly. Listen to this. Disquiet over Senate majority leadership seat. Northern APC senators insist on position. Want Ndume compensated for role in Akpabio's emergence. So nothing goes for nothing. In politics, there are only, as we say, permanent interests. No permanent friends, no permanent enemies. Well, there's more on that to come in the coming days. Above the nameplate, Naira in circulation up by 7.4% to 2.5 trillion Naira in May 2023. That's a page 10 read. I was about to, look at the downsides of this, the excess liquidity, as they say in business parlance. But then I remembered, that time when Nigerians had serious difficulty as a result of, the paucity of
so allow them to enjoy this excess liquidity, right?
So, well, this is a time to celebrate this. But going further down the nameplate, Salah, NSCDC deploys 40,000 men as FCT police assures residents of peaceful celebration. That is the expectation. And lastly, IGP Egbetokun orders withdrawal of police mobile officers from VIPs.
So there you go.
For This Nigeria.
Well, we've heard that time and again, that withdrawal, so we'll see how that plays out. So that's it with a look at some of the big stories on the front pages, but we're just getting started, all right? So stay with us. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the show.
In the Eid season, and there are certain elements that are integral parts of the celebration. We are now at the Apple Ram Market to find out the situation of things here.
It's a very busy day at this ram market in the Apple area of Abuja. Over 10,000 rams have been brought in from Kano, Jigawa and Zamfara states, as well as the Niger Republic. This time last year, a ram sold for between 70 to 100,000 naira, depending on the size. However, this year, the list cost of a ram is as high as 120,000 naira, and this has been blamed on the cost of transportation. It costs at least 6,000 naira to transport one ram to Abuja, compared to the cost of 3,000 naira last year. The price of feed for the ram has also increased. A bag of groundnut leaf now sells for 7,000 naira compared to last year when it sold at 6,500 naira. And a bag of corn husk now sells for 8,000 naira as against 5,500 naira last year. Abubakar Lawan is a ram dealer in this market, and he tells us more about the situation.
This way the biggest one. I have 3 here, and I'm selling them at the rate of 750. That's the biggest one. Then this one 650. Then the other one 550. The other ones, this one I can sell it for 400. You know, the cost of transportation. We are bringing it from Zamfara. This one I even bought it from Niger Republic. So you know, this for a subsidy of 18. The transport before 10,000 naira they will charge you per cow, but now what they are charging, this one I pay almost 20,000 naira for the transport and myself.
Other ram dealers blame the low patronage and increase in price on the cost of transportation and the country's economic situation.
120, 110 last year. So this year, you don't add the money because everything don't charge. Even the foil now, you don't add the money. Last year, we carry ram 3,000 from Adwa Megatari Gujungu. Now, we carry 7, 5, 10,000.
It's not a pleasant experience for the buyers. The prices have dug a big hole in their pockets.
People are finding it very difficult for purchasing the ram.
The same place I bought lamb, 65,000 naira. It's terrible. In fact, it's annoying that a country where we have all these stocks, we are finding it difficult to cope, to the extent that you can't buy goods, you can't buy ram for anything. Now, the ram we are seeing here, we have that of 120. That's the last I can see here. 450. 450 is enough to buy at least Sienna salad, as we used to know before. Now, I don't know where common man will start from.
The story is the same when we visited the food items market. There's no sign of celebration in the expression of this man. It's no different for this lady. Other Nigerians are still adjusting to the hard times occasioned by the recent government policies.
Price of almost everything has changed, and it's really affecting everybody, the rich, the not so rich, the poor. And you can see the mood of the market. The market is, you can't even tell Salah is tomorrow, unlike before. That means the buying power of people has really reduced. So I think really the government should try speedily, the speed with which they remove the subsidy. They should use the same speed to meet us halfway.
There's no doubt that many Nigerians are bearing the brunt of the aftermath of the fuel subsidy removal, even as they hope that the decisions of the government will put Africa's largest economy back on track. Victoria Longchon, Channels Television News.
So that's what we're starting off with in the spirit of the season, all right? And we have joining us this morning, Imam Raji AbdulGania is the Secretary, NASFAT Mission Board. He's an Islamic scholar and author, public speaker, teacher, and educationist. As you can see, he joins us right here in our Lagos studio. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You know, we started with the usual greetings, and I almost didn't have anyone because my colleagues had picked one, you know, Barkat Salah,
absolutely,
Eid Kabir, and the rest. But something hit me, which I just want to clear.
Okay.
So there's Eid AlAdha, and in Nigeria we call it Eid Kabir. It's the same thing, but I see that in Nigeria it's called Eid Kabir. Why is it different in Nigeria?
Okay, it's actually not different. In Nigeria, we also call it Eid AlAdha. Let me start by appreciating you for inviting me. Thank you very much. Whether you call it Eid Kabir, it's actually Al-Eid Kabir because it's an Arabic term. Al-Eid Kabir means the major festival. You know, we Muslims have two festivals.
Yeah.
We have one that we celebrate the conclusion of Ramadan fast. We see that one as a minor festival. Very important, there's no doubt about that. But this particular one, because we slaughter rams. And then this also brings about the commemoration of a lot of events in human history. And then it also marks the conclusion of Hajj. We have our brothers and sisters in Mecca now who are performing Hajj. So because of that major event, Hajj, a very important pillar of Islam, that this particular festival marks, so we call it a major festival. So that's what Al-Eid al-Kabir means, or whether you call it Eid al-Kabir or Al-Eid al-Kabir, that's what it means. We also call it Eid AlAdha because we slaughter rams, we slaughter camels, based on what you can afford. So whether you call it Eid al-Kabir or Eid AlAdha, it is the same festival.
It is the same festival. Okay, just in case you're outside the country and you know it as Eid AlAdha and you're wondering why are Nigerians calling it Eid al-Kabir, it is the same festival. The elephant in the room from that report we saw was a lot of Nigerians, you know, complaining about the reality of things. Amidst the festivities, the celebration, the commemoration, is the financial aspect of it. A lot of people wanting to buy rams, goat, and all of that. And I'd like you to speak to some of our viewers who may be watching us this morning. They don't have a ram tied in their compound or a goat, and they're wondering, am I celebrating? Is my celebration acceptable?
Or complete.
Or complete, as the case may be, before God. What do you tell them?
Okay, let me start by saying that the beauty of Islam is that God will never place on you a burden that you cannot carry. The slaughtering of an animal on the day of Eid, of course, a beautiful act, but it's not compulsory for those who cannot afford it.
It's not compulsory?
It's not compulsory for those who cannot afford it. If you can afford a ram, just go to the abattoir, just buy some meat and come home, cook it for your family, and then make them happy. So it is not a must that you go out there to borrow money or you go out of your way just to get money to buy a ram. So it is not compulsory for those who cannot afford it. But for those who can afford it, if they choose not to buy it, so it becomes a sin. So, and they have to seek forgiveness from God. But if you cannot afford it, last year you could afford it, you bought one or two. God has accepted your sacrifice. So if this year things are hard, so you don't need to put yourself under unnecessary pressure by saying, I must buy because I don't want to be put to shame by my neighbors. I don't want a situation whereby my neighbors will think that this year I'm not slaughtering a ram. So that does not mean that you are no longer a Muslim. That does not mean that you are not celebrating Eid al-Kabir. You are celebrating Eid al-Kabir like any other person. God sees your intention. God does not deal with our appearance or most of the things that we do. Even God himself, in Quran 22, God tells us that he's not interested in our rams. He's not interested in the meat of our ram, in the blood of our ram. He's only interested in our piety. So if you have the piety, if you have that belief in God, that I know that this year I can't afford a ram, but I will have wished to do so, you even get a reward from God. So it is God that will reward those who have slaughtered rams. So if your intention is, I wish I could also afford one this year, you will get a reward from God. So it is not a must that I must get a ram, or if I don't have a ram, I'm not celebrating. And it's important that we parents also educate our children, because sometimes children put pressure on their parents. That the parents of my friends have bought their rams and all that. How come my own father doesn't have a ram and all that? So by the time you educate your children and they know that, okay, this year there's no money to buy a ram, and then you train them, they will understand. But some of us, it's because we are scared of what our children will say, what our neighbors will say, and all that. But this is between you and God.
So it's
not
slaughtering.
It is not a competition. You are not slaughtering your ram because you want to please your neighbors or because you want to please anybody. It is God that you want to please. So if he chooses this year not to give you money to buy a ram, you don't need to put yourself under any unnecessary pressure.
You know, because one of the respondents there was saying, now the price of a ram is almost the price of a car. And, you know, some of us chuckled listening to that, but that is the reality. So now that you've said that, you know, the slaughtering is really not the cardinal part of this. It is not a competition, so do not feel bad. So maybe we should refocus then. So what is this season? What is this celebration really about?
Thank you very much. The Eid al-Kabir festival is a festival of sacrifice. It's a commemorative festival. It reminds us of Prophet Ibrahim, known as Abraham in Christianity, what he did for God. It's a sacrifice of true love of God. A festival of true love of God. It's a festival of true faith in God. Because when you talk about Ibrahim, known as Abraham in Christianity, whether you talk about the Bible or the Quran, you see that Abraham was a true servant of God. And then he dedicated his life to serving God. And then he went through a lot of trials and tribulations, but he exercised patience. So God wants us to learn from the story of Ibrahim. So when we come together on a day such as this to say we are celebrating Eid al-Kabir, we're actually commemorating Ibrahim. We are reminding ourselves that we also need to live our lives like Prophet Ibrahim lived his life. He was patient. For a very long time, he was barren. He was childless. But he never gave up on God. So this festival is about you not giving up on God, seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, believing that there's nothing that God cannot do, not being hopeless, not being despondent, not believing that, oh, because people have said I can't do it, I cannot do it again, or I cannot make it, believing that no matter what is happening around you, you can still make it, things can still get better for you. And it's also a festival of love. Because we slaughter rams, those of us who can afford rams, we slaughter rams, and then we share love. So it's a festival that tells us that we need to love one another, we need to show empathy to one another, we need to care about the less privileged around us, we need to show them love, and then we need to show love to the people around us, no matter where they come from, without minding whether they are this particular tribe or this particular language and all that. We show care, we show love, we show affection to the people around us. This is what this festival is about.
For me, you know, we started off by talking about how we should lead by example, and I'm just wondering if you see, you know, because we are a really religious people,
absolutely,
you know, in this country,
absolutely,
whether you are a
Muslim
person,
or a Christian, of course,
you know, committed to Christianity or Islam. So I wonder if you see that commitment to the faith, you know, across board, beyond the profession, you know, the verbal profession of faith?
Honestly, that's a very deep question. A lot of us, even in the Quran, God tells us that there was a time that the Arabs, you know, Prophet Muhammad was an Arab. They came to him, they were saying that we were the first people to accept Islam. You should honor us more than other tribes. You show us greater love than other tribes and all that. And God told them, keep quiet. Faith has actually not entered your heart. There is a world of difference between calling yourself a Muslim or calling yourself a Christian and living up to the true meaning of being a Muslim or the true meaning of being a Christian. So what does it mean to be a Muslim? This means being at peace with God and being at peace with the creatures of God. You show love to God and you show love to the people around you. For instance now, in Nigeria we have a situation whereby we have a lot of mosques. We have a lot of churches, but sometimes we ask ourselves, are we truly religious? Are we truly spiritual? Do we truly have a close connection, a close relationship with Allah, a very good relationship with Allah or with God? So I think we need to take our religiosity beyond the verbal pronouncement of religion that I am a Muslim, I am a Christian. We need to take it to the level of actually showcasing what it means to be a religious person by showing love, showing affection to the people around us, our parents, our children, our neighbors, no matter who they are. So I think we need to take it beyond that level. So we are not there. Most of us are not there yet. So we see people who come to you, they will tell you they are religious people and all that. Even by looking at the way they dress, you know that they are religious people. But when they relate with you, you will not like the way they are relating with you. And you begin to wonder, are you truly practicing the religion you say you are practicing? So I think we need to take our religion beyond the level of saying, I am this religion, I am that religion. We need to actually show what it means to be a religious person. We're not there yet. I need to tell you the truth.
Absolutely. And we are in a time of, difficulty, and I'm sure that our leaders have, tough options to pick from in terms of development. But what do you think is, really feasible within the context of what is available to the leaders? What should they be doing to bring Nigerians out of this difficulty that they're in right now?
Okay, by difficulty, are you talking about economic difficulty and all that?
Hardship, particularly.
Let me start by saying that leaders also need to lead by example. Just like a case of a father who is saying, my son, don't smoke, and he smokes in front of his son. So children learn by observation, not just because you've told them not to do something or to do it. Leaders also need to lead by example. We have been supporting the current president, or let me just say the current administration, with prayers, because their success is our success. If they fail, we have failed. They are our drivers. And if your driver is not okay, you should know that you are bound to probably fall into a canal and all that. So our leaders need to lead by example, and then they need to also be concerned about things that can, alleviate the current situation that, alleviate the current situation that the people are going through. Because truth be told, things are very hard. Honestly, things are very hard. But our leaders, I'm not going to tell them, I'm not a politician, I'm not going to tell them what they should do, but they can use the spirit of the season in which we are now to sit down and actually think about how they can make things better for the average Nigeria, because honestly, people are actually suffering and things are very hard.
There's this question I always ask each time we have an opportunity to discuss, religious festivities and what it means in reality. Majority of Nigerians belong to either of the major faiths.
Absolutely.
Really. And I've not, to the extent which I listen to the preachings, the religions preach peace and love. But ironically, in reality, what you find out is we have a major challenge with insecurity, which is a direct opposite of the preachings of peace.
Absolutely.
We have a challenge with corruption, which is direct opposite of love. Because if you show love to
justice,
people and justice, you will not want to cheat people or take what belongs to others.
Other people.
So it gets me wondering, is it that I don't listen to the preachings in full? Maybe the part I listen to is the only part that they preach peace and love. Maybe the other parts, there's the encouragement to, engage in, sharp practices and all of that.
Okay.
Is that something you've thought of and you've wondered, why do we have this irony existing in the country?
Thank you very much. It's not as if religious leaders are telling their followers to be violent. Hardly will you see a Muslim preacher or a Christian preacher who will say that you should go and kill Muslims or go and kill Christians and all that. I could recall that when the Boko Haram issues were very rife, one of my former students called me then. She was running a program abroad. And then she called me, Ustaz, is it true that Islam says that Muslims should be killing non-Muslims? I said, how can Islam say that Muslims should be killing non-Muslims? Then I began to show relevant verses in the Quran. See this, where the Quran says that we should relate with non-Muslims with love. We should allow them to practice their religion, and they should also allow us to practice our religion. We should not disturb them, and they should not disturb us. They do not disturb us. Why do we need to go and force them to join our religion? Why do we need to kill them? Why do we need to make things difficult for them? It's just that humanity in us. I want you to understand that. I read the other day about a young man, I think in the U.S., who killed some Muslims in the name of Jesus Christ. And then I read about him that he was actually a preacher in his church. Would you now say that it was his church or his pastor who asked him to go and do what he did? It's about the humanity, that weakness in us as human beings. So sometimes we come to the mosque or we come to church to listen to our preachers. We only listen to what we want to hear. And then what we want to do is right there in our mind. So it is not about religious leaders or religious preachers telling their followers, be corrupt, be violent, be killing non-Muslims and all that. So, and it is part of the fact that people have actually not understood the true meaning of religion. I think we mentioned that earlier. So there is a world of difference between saying I am religious and actually living up to the true meaning of being a religious person. So when you go to the mosque to listen to your preacher preach to you, or you go to church to listen to your pastor preach to you, and then you come back to kill, to steal, to take what belongs to somebody else, that means the preachings of your pastor has actually not entered you or sat with you. You've actually not internalized or imbibed the preachings of your
Which is why
leaders.
I want you to help us put in proper context, what the Quran states about, punishment for blasphemy and whether Islam as a religion of peace and, sacrifice, as you are celebrating today, trumps that, or that is also a cardinal part of the religion whereby, the religion posits, intolerance for blasphemy.
I know that recently there was an incident, I think in Sokoto and all that, a lady was killed because she was said to have blasphemed Prophet Muhammad and all that.
That was last year.
Last year, thank you very much. You see, this religion of ours is not a religion to be accepted or practiced by force. Are you getting my point now? You don't force people to accept your religion. You don't force people to accept or practice Islam. People have to accept Islam out of conviction that, okay, this is the right religion for me. If somebody chooses to renounce Islam, are you getting my point now? Probably the person has a reason to do so. In a country such as this, we are not practicing Sharia here. Even where Sharia is practiced, you will not go out there to stone the person or kill the person. Are you getting my point now? There has to be a court and a judge that will say this is what this person has done wrong. And it's not enough to say because the person has said, I'm no longer a Muslim, the next thing you do is, okay, people come around or come and stone him or come and set him ablaze because he has renounced Islam or because she has renounced Islam. So that is not it. So the issue of blasphemy, you can choose to, not to be a Muslim, but it's very wrong for you to actually go out and desecrate what some people somewhere hold very dear to them. Are you getting my point now? It's just like me as a Muslim now, going out there to say Jesus Christ is this and all that. It's very wrong. It is not everybody out there who is as educated as I am. Some will just mob you. They will lynch you. So you can practice your religion without desecrating, without disparaging another person's religion. I think what is happening in this country is you want to practice your religion, at the same time you want to show that the other person's religion.
On the Quranic punishment for blasphemy.
The Quran
and explain if that is what encourages.
The Quran does not in any way. What the Quran says is that even if you sit in a gathering where Allah or His Prophet is being blasphemed, what you should do is to leave. You leave that community. You leave that. Not that you will go and call people to come and kill. There's no Quran verse. If anybody has a Quran verse that says, okay, once somebody leaves Islam, the next thing you should do is to stone the person or set him ablaze.
So those who engage in mob justice are taking laws into their hands.
They are misunderstanding Islam. They are misunderstanding Islam. They are engaging in what we call jungle justice, which is not known to Islam. So that is it. They are misunderstanding Islam. They have misunderstood the religion. So there's no verse in the Quran that says you should kill. There's no such verse. If anybody has a verse that says, okay, if somebody says, I'm no longer a Muslim, the next thing you should do is to mob that person, is to set him ablaze, the person should show me the verse. I would like to see the verse.
So the case is referring to is the one that happened recently. Okay. So that's like 2 in the space of about 13 months. And, just looking through some of the, recent events too in the U.S., which you referenced, I didn't quite catch that one which you talk about. The one I remember was last year in New Mexico, which was done by Mohammed Said, aged 51. That was last year, and that has been taken to court.
Also happened in Canada.
In Canada?
Yes, in Canada.
I thought you meant the U.S.
A young man who killed a family of 5.
And, I'd like you to wrap up with this, because as we're very religious, you find a lot of people taking laws into their hands, going out of board. But let's maybe channel that in the right place now, in governance. What is expected of religious leaders, religious people in helping to build a nation, particularly? Because all of these preachings and teachings, I mean, a lot of people want to see it really come into place in nation building. So for the Muslim out there and, you know, listening to you, how would you encourage them to be a part of nation building, building the Nigeria which we all want to see?
It actually cut across all religions. It is not limited to Islam. Talking about Nigeria as a multi-religious and multi-ethnic nation, so we can only preach to our people out there, Muslims, Christians, even Jews, and other people that we have in the country, that this is our country. God has not made a mistake by making our country a multi-religious country or a multi-ethnic country. He could have made us a country that has just one ethnicity or one language. So what we need to do is to recognize that this is our country and we need to build it together. It is not one person that will build it. I could recall when I was doing NYC, part of what I did there was I was moving around schools, talking to young boys and young girls. This is our nation. You can't expect Indians to come and develop Nigeria. You can't expect Americans to come and develop Nigeria. It is Nigerians themselves who will develop this nation. So we need to find a way to come together. We need to just do away with our differences. This one is a Muslim. We have that problem. This one is a Muslim. This one is a Christian. This one is a Jew. It was not like this before. Growing up, it was not like this. You know, you will relate with your Christian neighbors. You relate with your Muslim neighbors. We didn't care what was your religion then. But we only cared about the fact that you are a Nigerian like me. So we need to, yes, we need to come together as people and develop this nation together. And this has to start from our homes. Training our children. What kind of morals are we teaching them? So we now live in a world where people just want to do it by all means. They must make it by all means. And parents are also training their children in the wrong way. Right. So we need to teach our children the wrong morals, the right morals rather. And we need to also relate with our neighbors in a way that will build love and also progress for our country.
I know it's a busy day for you, the prayers, then the slaughtering and the usual commemoration celebration, but we'd like to thank you so much for sparing some time with us.
Thank you very much. I forgot to ask him, by the way, how much he bought his ram.
Did you buy it for the price of a vehicle?
I'm an Imam. My society gave me one. Anyway.
Okay. There you go, some of the perks. Imam Raji AbdulGania is a secretary, NASFAT Mission Board, is an Islamic scholar, author, public speaker, teacher, and educationist. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, we'll take a moment now, and when we return, we're back with another leg of the conversation. So please don't go away. Stay with us.
Eid al-Kabir from Channels Television.
Majority of the youth in Nigeria presently are found guilty of drug abuse, and as such, it has really given the youth a setback in their future or life pursuit. Now, when you abuse drugs as a youth, it depreciates your spirit, your soul, and your mind against your already established plan for the future. And that is why we are calling on governments and security agencies to assist the youth by manhandling those that are into drug business. Once those that do the business have been manhandled, definitely those that are involved, be you politician, be you a philanthropist, a businessman, whatever you are in the country, if you are into that business, if the government and the security agencies can work together in manhandling them, then we'll get to the root of the issue.
They should also come up, even with private bills, to the House, what they think that can assist the youth in this state. These are things that we are expecting from them, and I believe that they can do this. They can do this, and that is for them to come together. For the generality of the public, of course, we are working in the House currently now, to see how we can come up with a law, particularly against public smoking. It's part of what we are thinking, because the issue of smoking not only affect the person smoking, but people around, where, around, it also affects their health.
Welcome back to Abuja Studios. The conversation around drug abuse and drug trafficking is one that has gone on over and over again. But every year, on June the 26th, the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking is marked. And in Nigeria, and in this year, the theme this year is People First. Stop, trying to get that exact one there. Stop stigma and discrimination, strengthen prevention. And we have in the studio to help us look at this matter, the Secretary of the Nigeria National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, Shadrach Haruna. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
Now, the President was quoted as saying, we could not agree less with the importance of this theme now that the most vulnerable population, especially women, young people, people living in marginalized environments, high-risk drug users, people displaced by armed conflicts and natural disasters, and people in rural settings are exposed to stigma, discrimination, and exclusion from mainstream opportunities. Mr. Haruna, at the NDLEA, you guys do a lot of work, and we hear that every time, doing all manner of drug busts almost on a daily basis. But looking at this theme, people first, stop stigma and discrimination, and strengthen prevention. Why do you think that theme came forth?
Well, the theme is not new in drug enforcement and drug policy, drug control issues. In fact, it is part and parcel of what NDLEA does. It's actually a segment of drug demand reduction, which of course has to balance with drug supply reduction. And when we have people first, what that means is human rights approach to drug policy, drug control. And what that means is anyone who is drug dependent or is a user should be seen as somebody who needs a support, who needs to be counseled, who needs to be treated with sympathy and empathy. So it is not a criminal, as it were, to say that such a person should not be given treatment or he should be seen as an outcast. He is not. What we do in NDLEA is actually, because we're first responder to issues of drug enforcement, we come across drug users, we come across those who are dependent on drugs, and we provide psychosocial counseling to them. We have rehabilitations where we bring in such people for treatment. So what we are saying, or what the theme is saying now, is everyone, including family members, should also show that empathy and sympathy to these people who are drug dependents. They should not be seen as an outcast and dealt with. Because some families just say, oh, well, this one is a drug user. We shouldn't have him in the house. That will exacerbate the problem. That will cause a lot of harm to that individual. So to reduce that harm, you have to be supportive and see how you can treat that individual.
Let's look at that matter of support that you talked about. A 2018 survey said people aged between 15 and 60 are involved in substance abuse. Yeah. Now, that's a 2018 survey, and over time, that number has been there. It's been quoted profusely by a lot of people. But there was, in relation to something you said, demand reduction and supply reduction. Why would you think that people of age 15 to 60 in Nigeria, about 42 point something million, if I remember correctly,
4.3 million, yes,
are into substance abuse? Why would you think that they would be so, the numbers will seem so huge in our space?
Well, that's a question for sociologists to actually unearth this thing. And we've conducted a research, really. In fact, that's a bracket which we have taken. And of course, you can imagine those above that age who are still into drugs and those below that age also using drugs. Because we have seen clearly that drug is not limited to that age group alone. And then there's that group, again, that are into drug, which we have not really taken cognizance of. So the push and pull factors to drug use is something that we have also been trying to find out, and part of what we've seen is actually poverty, lack of employment, and of course seeing some people who are despondent or people who don't really have anything, they just feel that they have no future anymore. These are some of them, but of course, largely it has to do with maybe their biological makeup, which of course made them to be predisposed to drug use. So there are so many issues to that, but of course, one cannot really point out an issue. Of course, we know that there's peer pressure as well. Mm-hmm. Peer pressure is a significant factor where even if you don't really want to do it, for instance, you're in school and then you want to belong to a particular group, you use drugs, not necessarily because you really want to use it. So these are some of the sociological factors that actually exacerbate drug use in the country. And having a country like Nigeria with a huge population, you should expect that, yes, the number of drug users will also be significantly high as well. So we're trying to do that. And the figure you mentioned, which is 2018 research work, to us is becoming obsolete. And in the last 29 months, the effort of the agency is something that we want to measure, to see whether we have made an impact or not.
So is that measurement on now? Are you...
Well, we're trying to commission a research. And of course, it's capital intensive. We're trying to do that because if we want to do a research, we want to do something that is verifiable, evidence-based, to see how far NDLEA has made an impact in the last 29 months.
Well, I'd like to encourage you that if you finally are able to get that report done and you find out that it doesn't look like you've moved the needle, I said do not be discouraged, because at least we know that it does appear that the NDLEA is now making efforts to give a weekly report of its own activities. Yeah. And you find out that, I mean, we can expect to see this every Sunday. For instance, right. I mean, on Sundays, on our own bulletin at least, we always have a story on the NDLEA and the effort that they have made so far, you know, busting people, say, at the airport. And sometimes I just ask myself when I see those stories, is it that people are not learning? that you know, you cannot keep using the same methods. You think that, I mean, these people who were caught the last time, you think they didn't try to conceal it properly or what? Why are you still attempting? But this is what we see. That, you know, the more, well, I say the bird decides not to perch, the hunter also has to learn how to keep aiming properly, to make sure that they keep the bird in check. So let me ask you, because the age group which you have spoken about is the most productive years of any human being, 15 to 60, are the people whom we understand are the most affected by this. And now you're saying this year the theme is people first. Some people will say that there needs to be a balance because what we're trying to do is discourage people from using drugs, from drug use. And I know that this education starts pretty early. I still remember drives are made by maybe Rotary Club and so to secondary schools, educating people on the harmful effects of drug abuse. And some people will say, if you now start setting up this, well, psychosocial counseling is very important and it is good. Some people think that it could also give rise to an increase in drug use. It would appear that the society is now becoming more tolerant of drug users. Do you ever fear that if we decide to go down that way, and I'm not saying we should discourage it, that it could send a wrong signaling to people who have stayed away or who might be on the verge of deciding whether or not to use drugs, and they might think, oh, well, if I do fall a victim, at least the state is there to look after me.
Yeah. Well, you're right, because we are very careful about that and very conscious of this people first issue and a human rights approach to it. We balance it in a way that will not give the impression that possession or use is not an offense. Currently, it is still an offense in our law, that if you use, you commit an offense. We have not discarded that from our law books. We're still looking at that. But at the same time, we try to balance it in such a manner that we will not disregard the human rights of the person who is using drugs. In in most cases, such individual is a victim, right? Is a victim of drug traffickers and drug peddlers and other things. So we try as much as possible not to give the impression that if you are a user or you are in possession of drugs or because you are addicted to drugs, you've not in any way committed any offense. You may be committing an offense, but of course we try to treat you first because we're the first responder. And we try to look at you as a human being first and foremost before we bring in these actions of law. So what we have done to ensure that we have that balance is to have a directorate which is charged with this issue of sensitization and raising awareness. We have a directorate which is called Drug Demand Reduction Directorate, and they do a lot of sensitization program, a lot of awareness raising in schools, like you mentioned. In fact, we're working with secondary schools and with partners to do what we call Unplug program. And this Unplug program is to catch them young, teach them to educate the younger ones, the ills of drugs.
Are you able to measure the effect of that education at the secondary school level?
Well, it's part of the research we want to do, which I've mentioned earlier, because we have gone around so many secondary schools and we want to know the impact. Of course, we're seeing the drug reduction in secondary school because we know that secondary school, they use drugs as well. Some of the pupils use drugs. But we have teachers who have been trained how to handle students and how to raise awareness amongst the students as well. So we also have WADA. WADA is War Against Drug Abuse, which was launched in 2021. And it's a grassroots type of program, which of course we expect that we use traditional rulers, we use homes, families, because hitherto, parents will not even take responsibility for their children. So we're trying to see how we can sensitize the traditional rulers, faith-based organizations, families to see and look out for the telltale signs of drug use in a home, in churches and in schools, and how to address such problems. So WADA has gained traction since 2021 when it was launched, that in all our commands across the country.
I'll be very honest with you. The only time I hear of WADA is when I'm in the studio asking questions. As an ordinary Nigerian, I mean, who is going about her business, I haven't heard of it on the streets or in my own community.
Well, I think maybe the media is not really carrying the message to others, because we've seen how WADA has really gone around some, I mean, our commanders have gone around some traditional rulers in their domain and sensitized them on issues of drugs. We've seen a lot of campaign being done in schools, in traditional rulers' domain and other places. So probably we have to stem up our media campaign to ensure that it shows everywhere. Otherwise, it is WADA that is our grassroots program on sensitization and education now. Yes. Attitudes
to drug usage. Some people will say that it does appear that attitudes are changing. And I know that this is something that the NDLEA has had to deal with, you know, decriminalization. Because in some countries now, from what we hear, some classes of drugs which were hitherto illegal are now being legalized. And then you also find people who say, oh, we travel to this country, we're able to use this, and if you go to this country, you'll be able to use this drug. We don't know why it's still criminalized in Nigeria. How are you dealing with the changing attitudes to, I would say, drug usage, at least some certain classes of drugs across the world?
You know, there's a lot of misconception when it comes to decriminalizing the use of drugs. A lot of misconception, because Nigerians hardly want to interrogate certain things before they come out with it. You travel to Canada, you travel to anywhere, and you say, oh, they have decriminalized marijuana or cannabis, and we're using it. But of course, you know, they have different species of marijuana. And in those countries, they have very good policy, very good enforcement and measurement standard, which they have to follow all these things. The type of cannabis grown worldwide, they have different species of them. And the species they have, which they say they have decriminalized in some of those countries, are those without tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the active ingredients that make one to something else. We have cannabis that is far, far more potent almost 45%, 100% tetrahydrocannabinol oil. We can't compare to what they're saying that they have decriminalized. And in those countries, the enforcement rule is very, very strict. And not so many countries, including America, has actually said, we have decriminalized some of these drugs. None, including UK. UK used to allow the importation of cannabinol oil, the one they use for the treatment. But of late, they have also restricted it because they noticed the increasing contents of cannabinol oil in that particular oil. But we are looking at it as, oh, some countries are making money. How do we try to prioritize commercial aspects of harmful drugs to the harm? And indeed, WHO has said the harmful impact of cannabis is far more outweighs the beneficial interest. So where do we stand? And some people are saying, oh, well, we make a lot of money from it. But it is not money we're looking for. We're looking for the health of the nation. We're looking for the well-being of individuals. But they are talking about the commercialization of drug and all those things. To me, it's a misconception, which, of course, we must also, the media should come out against it. Because we know that it is something that is wrong for this country. We can't do it in this country.
Well, I do have a follow-up to that, but I know that my colleagues are, they really want to get a question in. Over now to you, Kayode and Bukola.
Yes, thank you, Malkwe. And just in relation to that, exactly, Mr. Haruna, there is a bill before the House of Representatives that seeks to legalize the growth of cannabis in the country. That bill specifically will allow the NDLEA to grant license, to those who want to grow cannabis sativa for recreational and medicinal use in Nigeria. I wonder what the position of the agency would be, particularly, with the current realities before us. How are youths smoke marijuana openly on the streets of many communities in this country? So what would the position of the agency be on this?
The agency is absolutely against such a move. There is no law, or there's no, when they say they want to pass a bill, it's a bill, of course. Of course, it has to be debated. We've not been called to any public hearing of that bill. And if we're called to the public hearing, we'll certainly give our own opinion about the bill. Because it is not something that the country can afford at this time, that we allow certain things for recreational, for cannabis, for recreational use in the country. Even developed countries that have a very effective system have not allowed recreational use of it for now. They may have allowed, some may have allowed for medicinal use, like Canada, which is using it for medicinal purposes and others. But even those ones being used are those without tetrahydrocannabinol oil. So for recreational use, it's not something any country wants to take it in a hurry, certainly not Nigeria. And the agency will go against such a thing. And the law cannot be passed without input from the public. So if an individual is putting in such a bill, of course, that bill is subject to public debate. And we would certainly bring our own opinion to bear on such a bill. And I think most Nigerians, and I believe most Nigerians will not allow that to happen. Currently, we have the law against it, and you can see the prevalence of use in the country, particularly in cannabis and methamphetamine. Not to say that you bring such a law that you say, oh, you allow it for whatever purpose, whether medicinal or recreational use. Of course, that would be a call for a country that will really become a stupor to drug use. I don't think that would be necessary. And I think that bill has been defeated anyway after the second reading, if I have my facts right. So I don't think that bill can go anywhere.
It has suffered a setback.
If any group or individual wants to sponsor such a bill, we want to hear it and we want to go with our opinion.
It indeed has suffered a setback, but we wonder if that will be the last that has been heard of the bill. But still speaking about attitudes, following up on Malkwe's question, I wonder if the agencies, following trends. There are videos available online where youths are smoking what is now called shisha. And in the recent past, what we saw was one particular substance from the southeast that gained prominence from the southeast called Umpuru Miri. I wonder if the agency is following up on such trends and if it is also deploying communication in the digital age to discourage the promotion of such, because when it continues, it gains prominence because such, endorse the activities, particularly amongst youths.
Yeah, you're right, because we have seen, and we're on top of the issue, particularly the issue of shisha you mentioned. Shisha itself is just like any cigarette, but it's usually laced with cannabis and some other drugs. And what we do, of course, we do our own covert operations as well to know which area offers this type of laced shisha to youth and other people to use. Same thing with methamphetamine, Mpurimiri, which you have mentioned. And the good news about Mpurimiri is that even the communities in the East where they are producing this Mpurimiri, they're also up against it. And we're working with the communities. And that's where WADA comes in. We're working with the communities, and we're trying as much as possible to locate where they're doing it in the forest, because some of them actually manufacture this in the forest. And we have information, and we're on their track. The agency recently, if you remember, actually caught some people in VGC producing Mpurimiri there. So we know some of them are also in the forest producing this Mpurimiri, and we're after them. So it's not something that we are not aware of. We know the trend of things, we know how it's going, but of course, before you see the result, a lot of resources would have gone in. And we have invested a lot of resources to information gathering, invested a lot of resources to covert operations, and invested a lot of resources to whistleblowers. So there's a lot going into it. So we are actually on top of that. So all these issues is something that we gather on a daily basis and try to follow it up accordingly.
And just before I yield to my colleague, you were talking earlier on about data, and the agency has been providing such, even though it hasn't been sufficient as it should be. But the agency let us know that 18,940 suspected drug traffickers were arrested between 2021 and 2022, and about 17,500 of them were men and 1,500 were women. You can put that also in proper perspective. But how significant is the gender difference, in this data that has been provided? And what are the variations in the socioeconomic factors encouraging, men and women alike to peddle and abuse drug?
Well, one cannot say precisely why we have everyone into drugs now, but of course you know very well that if you're living in a society, and we're all human beings, and what men are doing, women are also doing. So we're not leaving anyone. It's gone are the days when you think that, okay, women will not venture into certain things, but now we have them. We have everywhere. We have them doing anything that the man is doing. So we cannot say precisely that our investigation or our focus should be on men or gender or women alone. We're taking everyone along. We're not looking at it as saying that it's only men that we should investigate. But the point there is, as we move along, depending on the intelligence we've gathered, depending on the information and the covert operations, whatever it on net is where we follow. And that is why you are seeing so many women coming in. In fact, because women are usually seen as the weaker sex by so many, of course, we don't look at it as such, and then they use them. If you see a woman, the tendency for you to feel that, oh, well, she cannot do this. So traffickers, barons use women a lot. And we know that some of them may not be users, but of course, so many of them are coming into drug use now. Right. Because if you go out there, you see so many women using drugs. In fact, recently we saw some online with the Fulani girls carrying their wares, smoking cannabis anywhere. And it shows how far this thing has permeated even the traditional settings of people and has actually affected the culture as well. So we're not looking at anybody on the basis of sex or on the basis of gender or anything. We're looking at the individual as human being. And anyone is capable of using drug and capable of selling and trafficking drug as well.
Right.
So the agency is not restricting its searchlight on a particular gender.
Well, just two quick issues, Mr. Haruna.
And then on the issue of data, which you mentioned, is something that we're working on. We're working on the research, because what we bring out on daily basis or weekly basis is based on what we have done on that particular week. But the holistic area regarding how data are gathered is what we're going to do very soon, to see where we are regarding the work we have done, how far we have achieved, what the outcome of what we have done in the last 29 months, whether we have achieved enough or whether it's increasing or decreasing. We want to see that and know how to strategize further about it.
I'd like you to quickly update Nigerians, because there's been a lot of talk about that famous Ikorodu drug bust worth hundreds of millions of dollars. By way of update to Nigerians, because that was a major issue then. A lot of people were shocked, but still a lot of people wanted to see the case to a conclusion, maybe uncover those behind it and then have them out there. So if you can update Nigerians on that particular case, where is the NDLEA with that case now?
Well, let me say the case is in court, and we've gotten an order from the courts to also destroy the wares, the cocaine, which was recovered from the Ikorodu warehouse. We destroyed them, and it was a public destruction, where we got everyone, NGOs, including the judge, who actually condemned it to forfeiture and condemned it to be destroyed, to witness the destruction. The people that were caught they're actually facing trial currently, and of course we're not stopping at that, because we know the origin of those drugs that came in, and we're also working with our partners to investigate backward, to see who actually was the brain behind the whole thing. So currently, the criminal matter is in court, and the investigation is ongoing. So I think that's what I can say for now. I wouldn't want to go to details regarding how we're deploying our investigation, our covert operations to net some of those people behind it, other than those ones that were arrested.
And, I mean, the assurance you've given is you follow this to a conclusion, no matter who may be involved or highly placed the person is. Also,
absolutely.
I'd like to get you to speak to that proposal to get politicians to take drug tests. I know the chairman had spoken about it, even said at some point that, you know, he had written a letter to the chairman of the APC to conduct drug tests on all the party's aspirants. Whatever happened to that? Was there like a pushback from the political parties, or what exactly?
No, well, you see, the issue of drug tests is not something that has been provided by law. It's a policy on a way to reduce drug supply and drug demand. What that means is not just targeting the politicians, but actually the policy is targeting everyone, including families in the home, not just the politicians. Politicians, because they're coming to the position of governance, we want to see that, yes, if they want to submit to drug test, why not? It's a voluntary action. You have to voluntarily agree to subject to drug tests. It's not something that you have to be forced by law for now. I know that the National Assembly wanted to introduce a bill. I think there's a bill currently pending in the National Assembly, but we don't know when that will come to light. But the policy behind the whole thing is to detect those who use drugs early and see how we can also assist them in coming out of it. And that is the issue of these people first we're talking about.
Yeah, which is a very important point.
Human-centered approach to drug enforcement.
Right, Mr. Arruda, which is a very important point. Pardon me. Which is very important to, especially the commemoration of this year's, let's say, celebration, really, just to ensure it's holistic. But for that particular case, the letter which was written to the chairman of the APC, is it that the commission didn't get or the agency didn't get a response, or you got a response from the chairman saying, well, no, we're not going to allow this happen? What exactly happened to that particular case with the chairman?
I don't think it's just to the APC chairman alone. I think the letter was sent to everyone, including teachers in secondary schools and ministries, Ministry of Education, Civil Service Commission, Civil Head of Service as well, for people, particularly civil servants, as well as politicians.
Yeah, I understand.
In all this,
I'm referring to this particular case.
Is, okay, we're looking at
what
it.
happened to this case? Did you get a favorable response or not? So Nigerians can maybe understand the thinking of the political class as well. Did you get a yes or no, or there was no response at all to this particular case, which the chairman mentioned?
Well, what we got is that they're looking at the logistic of doing that. And we have not really pushed back, continue with it and say, because we know it's a voluntary act. And if you're not willing to come to subject to drug tests, fine. We can't force you to do that. But of course, the letter is not just to political leaders, it's also to civil servants and to schools and universities. All we're trying to do is to detect those who use drugs early and see how they could be helped out of it. And indeed, some institutions are coming to us voluntarily to do drug tests to their staff. And we have done that, we've conducted that. Some who are recruiting also come to us to do drug tests. We did drug tests to all the applicants who applied for NDLEA this year. And those who are found to be using drugs, we know what to do with them. We don't arrest them, but we ask them, we advise them to go for counseling and then provide counseling and social counseling services to them. The same way, those other institutions that have come voluntarily to be screened, to be drug tested, we also detected some drug users among them. They are not to be arrested, but have to be provided social counseling as well. Because there are so many functional users, if I may say, so many functional users who are actually working. You don't see the impact of drugs on them, on the way they work, but it's good for them to come out of it so that they can put in their full potential. And that is the essence of the drug test. It's not in any way trying to stigmatize any individual. Indeed, the report of drug tests is very, very confidential. It's not something that will be made known to anybody. Of course, it's on a need-to-know basis. Some of the institutions that have come to us, we discovered that so many of them, so many of their staff, are actually on drugs. But what we tell them is, don't dismiss them from service. Allow them to sign in confidentially to drug treatment plan, and we will support. And if they have their own rehab to go to, of course, they can do that. So it is not something that anybody wants to use it as a punishment ground for anyone, but to see how we can help the individual.
Okay. What drug did you find the most common as per drug use?
Cannabis and methamphetamine.
That's in Purumiri?
Purumiri, yes.
And that's in a particular area of the region of the country. That's the Purumiri.
Well,
because at a certain time when
Igbo calls it in Purumiri, but it's everywhere. It's methamphetamine. Okay. It's everywhere in the north, in the southwest, in the north central, all parts of the country now.
There was a time
it's not just located to one region.
There was a time it looked as if it was the cough syrup that was most consumed across the country.
Codeine.
Codeine.
Yeah.
But let's.
Is that on the down low? Just asking quickly.
Whether it is still an issue.
Is cough syrup still an issue?
Oh, yes, it is still an issue. Codeine is still an issue. But, of course, we have a policy that has stopped it for a long time. And I think the production of it has also slowed down considerably.
You know,
but it's still an issue.
Is it possible that there are some people who might be abusing substances without knowing that they are? And how do you get such a person to step out of it?
Well, I don't know, except, of course, if it's on prescription. Otherwise, if you want to use it, you use it, and you know you're using it. And that's why we have so many functional users, in the sense that those ones who are using it and still working as if nothing is happening to them. But it's good for you. If you think you are dependent on it and you need it to work, you can actually come out of it. You don't want it to degenerate to the level that you become so dependent, and it will cause a lot of harm to you and to your loved ones as well. And that is the essence of the drug test, which the policy, which the NDLEA came out with.
Just a quick one. At what point, you talked about effective users, those who are using it, maybe depending on it. At what point can one say, I'm beginning to abuse this? Because everything can be abused. Even water can be abused. So at what point can an individual say, it's time for me to get help?
When you know that you can't do without it.
Okay, so
when you know you can do without it, you know you're getting dependent.
Are there effective treatment, and is the NDLEA collaborating with anyone to see how this can be effective in Nigeria?
Yes, I think there's effective treatment. If you detect it early, you can actually come out of it. In fact, social counseling, as well as some form of treatment, can actually bring you out of drug use completely.
It's interesting when my colleague asked a question about shisha
Yes.
You identified it as a drug. Is it a drug?
No. I did not say it's a drug. I said it could be laced with cannabis. Shisha is being used everywhere like cigarette, like others. But of course, what they do now is to lace it, just like they lace Zobo. You know, if you go to these convenience centers and everywhere, you see Zobo being sold to those individuals, including tea in the market squares, motor parks. There are some people who sell special tea to their own customers. When you come in and you say, give me my usual, they know who you are, and they give you the one that is laced with cannabis. Same with pepper soup. So shisha is also laced with cannabis now, and people are taking it. And our officers are working. In fact, so many of them, they know the joints where they have pepper soup with cannabis, the joint where they sell Zobo with cannabis, or candies with cannabis.
What could be driving this innovation? I mean, beyond the business side of it, there are those who want to make money out of it, but there are those who are going to consume these things. I know you talked about the role of the family and the society and the traditional institutions, but then what is driving that desire to consume these things? And because more and more people go there to consume them.
Well, I think those who, as much as possible, they want to mask it in such a manner that they can use it like any other thing, like you buy a biscuit on the counter. You can't buy cannabis on the counter. But if it's masked in that way, you can still achieve what you need from cannabis by buying those candies or anything, or Zobo, or pepper soup, or anything, and then feel the same as if you're taking cannabis. Of course, it's cannabis. And of course, you also cannot rule out completely the idea of those ones who want to get people addicted to it so that they can sell their wares. You know, so many people want to lace it and get so many children dependent on it. And eventually they'll now become dependent and be able to sell whatever they have as drugs to them.
Okay, so we're rounding out, and this will be like the last question I'll ask you, but just a word of advice. I mean, this is a holiday, people are at home and wondering, some might be planning to go hang out or something, but if you had a word of advice for Nigerians, the family, and Mark will ask the questions about growing attitude for these things, what would it be coming from the NDLEA?
Well, NDLEA wants to advise everyone to stay away from drugs. Whatever it is, if you know it is illicit drugs, stay away from it. If it is not prescribed drugs, stay away from it, including Panadol. Stay away from it when it is not prescribed for you. And for those who are already dependent on it, what we say is families should also support them. Support them to come out of it, and institutions should also support them. Because you can't have somebody who is dependent and a functional worker, and you dismiss that person without support, and the person will certainly go back into drug completely. So what we advise institutions, if you identify by doing drug tests in your institutions and come across a user who is a functional user, support that individual to take treatment, to receive treatment and come out of this drug.
All right, thank you.
So this is what we want to advise our Nigerians to do this time around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shedrack Haruna is the Secretary of the NDLEA, and he joined us here in Abuja. Thank you for today.
Thank you.
And enjoy your holiday.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me this morning.
Sarah Zeli will be back in... Baraka de Salah to you too. Sarah Zeli will be back in a moment. Just stay with us.
The Duchess International Hospital opened its doors in October 2021. The mission of the hospital is to reverse medical tourism. We take particular care here at the Duchess to bring together a combination of the brightest and the best locally, as well as Nigerians in the diaspora who are interested in returning to do very good work for the benefit of our patients here in this country.
The good thing is that we have all international expertise here, all international facilities here, international people working here. Everything is coming together in a space which was considered not great in terms of the availability of healthcare.
Access Bank, of course, has been able to provide us with a robust range of products and services that has enabled us to deliver that standard and quality of healthcare that is integral to our mission as an organization.
Well, there's a lot of talk about leadership today, and it's honestly in the spirit of the season, really. Sacrificing leadership, setting the right examples, love, and all of that. So we're continuing in that trajectory, honestly, still in the spirit of the season, and we're focusing on transparency in governance, trickling down from the federal to the state level. And as you've seen, we're joined by Dr. Otive Igbuzo, who is founding executive director, African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development Center. That's the LSD. He joins us virtually on the program this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to join you this morning.
Right, and now we're having this conversation on the back of the Nigerian State's Budget Transparency Survey 2022, which showed very, very interesting outcomes across states, just how well states are transparent when it comes to their budgetary process. I remember reading a book by former Minister of Finance of Nigeria, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and she sort of was saying that one of her biggest headaches was the budgetary process, having to take, the document to the National Assembly. I mean, she really dwelt on that, how much of a headache it was usually. They will set parameters, it will be changed, different things will be snuck in, and it just got me thinking, if that is happening at the federal level, just how much will be happening at the states, 36 states of the Federation? You've done extensive work on all of this, and I'd like you to speak to just how far we have come, if we have come that far anyway, in terms of transparency, accountability in the budgetary process. I know you've also worked in the National Assembly as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. The point is that budget is very important for any country or state because it is through budgetary provisions that services are delivered to citizens. And the budget process as important as the content. And the work that you talked about looked at three main parameters. First is the availability of the budget documents to the public. And second is participation of citizens and the public in the budgetary process. And then the third is the procurement process that is used in these states. Now, the work was actually done, the survey was done by and what was found only a slight improvement from the survey that was done 2 years ago. Like you said, our general observation is that at the federal level, it appears to be more robust, more issues of transparency and accountability than at the sub-national levels in the 36 states of the Federation. And our argument has been that all over the world, in order to promote transparency and accountability in governance, there are 4 key things that needs to be done. First is the government agency that is making the procurement or the expenses must put in place internal procedures and measures for transparency and accountability, including financial letters, financial procedures, and procurement processes. Second, the parliament should have oversight over the entire budgetary process and expenses. And thirdly, citizens and the media should have oversight and monitoring across the entire spectrum. And then finally, independent institutions like the ICPC and the EFCC should be able to ensure that there's transparency and accountability. The challenge we have in Nigeria is that these 4 categories of people are not doing the work to the optimum. That is why we have the level of opacity and lack of transparency and accountability and the high level of corruption that we see in the country. And it appears that these 4 issues I talked about, these 4 institutions, these 4 categories of people are also more active at the federal level than the state level. That is why in many states of the Federation, they don't even talk about corruption. They don't have any mechanism for dealing with corruption. They don't raise the issues. They don't bring officers from state level who are corrupt. We only hear about corruption in the state when EFCC or ICPC is pursuing somebody. But if you look at it, you discover that many states of the Federation are more than 50 small countries across the world. There are countries across the world that have less than a population of less than 1 million. And certainly, more than 50 countries across the world have population now less than 4 million. And many states in this country have population more than 4 million. So a state can even operate as if it's a country. That is the challenge we have of transparency and accountability at the subnational level.
You know, that report, or the survey, I should say, it was done by the Civil Resource Development and Documentation Center. It focuses on budgeting. I know the PLSI, which is another civil society organization, does work on audit efficacy as well, and they're all linked together, literally. And the trend we've seen time and again is that there are lots of things happening at the state level. And if you could just look at the outcome of the survey, you see that only one state actually performed very well, got a score of A, which is 84. And that is Jigawa State. And, you know, looking through, you'd see states like Rivers. Rivers is at the very bottom with 16. That's literally the least in terms of, you know, budget transparency. Niger State, Benue State, Nasarawa, those are the least or at the bottom 4. I wonder, these are states you would expect that at least I mean, they will do quite well, especially because they get a lot of money. River State, for example, gets a lot from oil. So what is behind all of this? How is it that this goes on year after year and looks like no one bats an eyelid?
I don't think that it is completely true that no one is batting an eyelid. People are raising issues. If you go to the media, people are raising issues about the need for transparency and accountability. And like I said earlier, why you have this happening in those states is because of the kind of leadership in those states. They do not prioritize transparency and accountability. You know, many of the states, and it's also because there's no consequence. There's no consequence. If, for instance, a leader or a governor in a particular state, this survey comes and that leader has the lowest, and the people in the state are outraged, and in the next election, they vote the person out, you will see that everybody will struggle. So why this is so is because, you know, in those states, they are not prioritizing transparency and accountability. So government agencies and institutions are not abiding by financial circulars. In fact, at the top level, many of them, you can see a governor can visit a site and say, look, this place is bad. Okay, I will give you road. And the following day, say, look, Julius, even before the time he says Julius Berger who will do this road. And then you call Julius Berger and you pay. So when those states are challenged at first, they don't have processes. And secondly, the civil society, citizens, and the media are not doing enough monitoring. In some of the states, the media have been captured, you know, so they just merely parrot whatever the state is. So there is no critical engagement with the state. And then the parliament are not asking the right questions. You know, part of the problem is that in many of the states, the governors decide who goes to the House of Assembly, and so and even decide the leadership, you know. So the legislature that is supposed to do the oversight is not doing the necessary oversight. And you know that even ICPC and EFCC are now having challenges doing engaging with corruptible transactions in state. You know, there are examples in the past where EFCC arrested some people in the state And then the states government will come out and say, our money is not missing. So what is your problem? So all of these are good environment for lack of transparency and accountability. And that is why you see that kind of report that we've seen. And the solution is really that we need a whole of society approach to dealing with corruption and to dealing with issues of transparency and accountability, which will involve everyone, citizens, media, government institutions, parliament, and then independent institutions that are set up. In fact, we should actually begin to advocate for states to have their own, if they claim coordinate powers as a federal state, you know, they should be able to have their own anti-corruption institutions that we deal, because one of the ways of dealing with corruption is discussing it. But, well, like I said earlier, in the States, there are no discussions. It's not an issue. It's not raised. So if you have anti-corruption commissions within the state, then the issue of corruption will be on the table. And if they are manned by seasoned people who are committed and passionate to public service, then you begin to see some improvement in those states that have performed very poorly.
Mr. Stevie, let's discuss it further and see if we can get a bit more insight. And your organization has provided a very, clear report, as the case may be. Apart from the observation made by my colleague Kaide earlier that some states surprisingly are at the bottom, and the others, which would have expected to be opaque in terms of transparency, are actually at the top. I'm looking at Jigawa now. Jigawa actually scores high, 84%, and just after Jigawa, you have Kano that has 64%. So there really is only one state that scores that high. But talk to us about, this pictorial where you have 81 for providing extensive information, and it's categorized in green, 61 to 80, also categorized in a lighter shade of green, providing significant information, and we find yellow providing some information, and then red, that's at the bottom, providing scant or no information. So what information specifically are they making readily available, and what information are they withholding that categorizes them as highly transparent or opaque, providing no information at all?
Thank you very much. This study is actually at the basic of transparency and accountability, because one of the basic tenets of transparency is access to information. So access to information regarding budget. So in this study, we looked at 10 basic information that is made available and publicly available. So it's not information that you put on your shelf, information that you put on your website or it's published and other people can access it. They include, for instance, the budgetary proposal that was sent by the state government to the House of Assembly. They include the final approved appropriation act for the budget. They include what we call citizens' budget, whether it was summarized into a document that citizens can easily understand. They include quarterly report of the performance of the budget, whether it's available. They include annual report of the budget. They include the audit report that is produced by the Auditor General of the state, and they include the Accountant General's report. So these are just basic that under normal circumstances, if you have nothing to hide, and in terms of modern governance, that state governments should be able to make available to the public. But for many of the states, it's not available. So for where you have all of them available, that is where you have that categorization. Then some have a few available, and you have the second categorization, and then the third categorization. So these are the basic documents that we are talking about. When they are available, then they are categorized according to those levels.
Also, you mentioned the Auditor General's report, which is key to, government spending, public expenditure, and accounts. And some states have begun to, legislate for independence of the autonomy, the independence and autonomy of the Office of the State Auditors General. But how significant is this, even in the light of the fact that the independence granted the Office of the Auditor General most of the time is just on paper, but they're not independent enough to look at the books of the spendings of the executives?
I think you have captured it very clearly and correctly. The Office of the Auditor General is key, is crucial in terms of transparency and accountability in the running of governance. And the World Bank provided some incentives and facility initiatives to various states. And we think that that is why many of the state governments have now put audit laws. And that is one of our reflections, because some of the level of improvement that we see in the past 2 years, some people have alluded to the fact that it's because of that incentive. So, because this survey is done every 2 years, we are looking forward to the next 2 years where there will be when this facility from World Bank will not be there to see whether we will see improvement. But you are very correct about the difference between law and practice. Many of the states have put the audit law in place, and the audit law, one of the major provisions is that the Office of the Auditor General will get their budgetary approvals from the consolidated revenue line. But from interactions, it's not all of them that, are implementing it according to the letter.
Right.
But you will also know that it's not unusual in this country.
Okay.
I'm sure you will recall that the Procurement Act at the national level was put into law in 2007.
Well, clearly, Dr. Egbuzo, this is a conversation that really might be endless at this rate, but you've provided very important insights, and I do hope that they'll be taken into consideration on the back of that survey, which doesn't look good at all for the states. But we'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Otive Egbuzo, the founding executive director, Africa Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
It's my pleasure.
Well, that's the package for today. It's a holiday, so I know you have a lot to do, so make this day a great one. Don't indulge too much, all right? And don't forget the ones that do not have. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
Well, even if you indulged just a little bit, but don't forget the message of the season, which is to sacrifice for the greater good. Thank you for sharing your morning with us. I am Bukola Koka.
Yes, indeed. We also got your feedback, Professor Nakena, Honorable Ademola Al-Adha, and Festus Akimboyewa, who's wishing everyone Baraka Eid Al-Adha to all our Muslim brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Neo Taigwe. Bye-bye.